Make sure you guys hit the subscribe button if you guys are enjoying the content that we're throwing up. And make sure you guys hit the like button if you enjoy the video. And yeah, let's begin. All right, what's going on, guys? This is Rob, and we are picking back up again with Deceased, and it's still like an amazing story, right? Like, this is one you guys need to get out and buy. Okay, so we pick up with the last video that we did, right? And the last video that we did focused on the idea that the various villains who existed out there had basically recreated the Amazos with Dr. Ivo, right? Dr. Ivo was the guy who originally created Amazo, and he's essentially working for the villains. Now, Amazo is basically an android, but he essentially has the powers of the Justice League, and he's one of these guys where just one Amazo can actually take out the whole Justice League. They have a whole army of them. And one thing to keep in mind, the Justice League, as we think about it, is like the traditional Superman, the traditional Batman. And not to really knock on Jonathan Kent or Damian Wayne, but they're no Clark Kent or Bruce Wayne respectively, right? Like, they're just not on the same level as their fathers. And so what you're talking about is an army of Amazos that's going to be taking on what is, in effect, a diminished Justice League. Now, for Oswald Cobblepot, right, for the Penguin, he's kind of impatient here. He's like, dude, you promised us results a while ago, right? It starts to piss off Ivo, and he's like, look, man, like, he basically like activates a few of these robots. He's like, look, man, just one of these can take out the Justice League. What do you think they'll do to you? And understand, these guys run on programming. If I leave off a decimal point, these guys will wipe out everything on the planet, right? So I have to make sure this is programmed meticulously, because remember, the whole idea of the villains is to wipe out the unliving, but not for any kind of altruistic means. It's because once the unliving are wiped out, they can in turn most likely turn the Amazos onto the superheroes, take the superheroes out, and then inherit the world for themselves, right? It's just kind of a circumstantial world domination is basically what it is. Now, the other part of that, what we end up doing is we switch over to Cyborg. And in reality, it's a little bit disappointing, but it turns out that the life equation is inside Cyborg, and he basically restructures or recodes his blood so that the life equation is confined within his own genome. The issue that I have with that is I was really hoping we would see White Lanterns. If I'm going to be honest with you guys, I was really hoping we would see White Lanterns, because remember, all the various superheroes who made it off Earth and are basically headed toward, who took off into space, they're with the Green Lanterns, right? Like, don't forget, the Green Lanterns are out there, and all the other heroes are with the Green Lanterns. The other heroes, the surviving humans, they're all currently with the Green Lantern Corps. But regardless, what we end up having here is basically like this kind of conversation, right? How do they get this out of them? Like, how do they get the life equation essentially out of Cyborg and then turn it into something that can be used, like synthesize it into a cure that can be given to people? Well, Damian Wayne ends up having the idea to go see Swamp Thing. And the reason why is not necessarily because of Swamp Thing, but because of Alec Holland. Remember, Alec Holland is the name of the guy who became Swamp Thing, and he was a gifted biochemist, right? A biologist and a biochemist, probably the best in the world before he became Swamp Thing. And Damian kind of hits him up and says, look, man, like, we need you, right? Like, we need the mind of Alec Holland to help us solve this problem, right? To help us solve this equation. And initially, Swamp Thing is a little bit hesitant, not in the sense that he's just like, I never really liked Alec, so I don't want to work with you, right? It's not like a Bruce Banner Incredible Hulk dichotomy. It is one of these things where he's like, I can't do this on my own. What you're asking me to do is not something that I can do myself. I mean, I could, but not in the short period of time that you're looking for, because what you're looking to do is to synthesize a cure as fast as humanly possible and then spread it to the world. And while I am incredibly powerful, I'm not powerful on that level, right? And so what he ends up saying, what Damian Wayne did is actually concoct a plan exceedingly fast and say, yeah, you're not going to be doing this alone. And the way this works is actually pretty genius, right? So you've got Swamp Thing here, you've got Poison Ivy, you've got Dr. Fate, you've got Cyborg, you've got Detective Chimp, you've got Mary Marvel, the New 52 Wally West, the young black Wally West, you've got Harley Quinn. You have all these people who are here because in some form or fashion, they can basically help to synthesize this synthesize this cure much faster, right? Mary Marvel's got wisdom, the cure is inside of Cyborg, Alec Holland is the mind of a genius level biochemist and biologist, Dr. Fate, who's there to basically unite the minds of all the people who are here. Poison Ivy was a doctor of toxicology, Harley Quinn was a doctor of psychology and medicine, and Wally West has the fastest mind on the planet. And then literally Tom Taylor's like, Batman's here because he's Batman. And that's the only explanation we get. Because he's Batman. But essentially, they're able to kind of turn this into a cure that can be synthesized, right? So it's only the first step. The next step is to actually mass produce it, right? And so you kind of get these diametrically opposing views in the sense that Superman steps up and says, now we can save them all. At the same time, over in the layer of the villains, it's now we can wipe them all out, right? So they're literally creating two different means to cure the anti-life virus. One depends on wiping out everybody that's infected, and the other one is about basically saving people, curing people who are infected. infected. And so when the Amazos start ripping across, right, from their base of operations, spreading outward like a plague, killing everybody who's infected with unlife, literally just spraying them down with heat vision, this kind of switches back over to the heroes who basically say, okay, now that we've got the actual cure, we need a test subject. And initially, Black Canary, or I guess really Green Canary now, wants to start with Oliver Queen, but you end up having Scott Free, who's like, no, we should start with Barda. And Scott Free plays this incredibly smart, right? Because Dinah gets pissed off. She's like, why should we start with Barda, right? Why shouldn't we start with Oliver? And Scott Free's like, well, here's the thing to think about. See, like, here's the thing to understand. See, if something goes wrong, then Barda is probably strong enough to take it. We shouldn't really risk Oliver Queen's life. I read that and I was like, well played, Scott Free. Well played. And so what we end up doing is transitioning, or at least kind of teleporting to basically a life habitable planet that's out there by Alpha Centauri, right? Just some star out there. And where Scott Free initially had Barda tied up, she of course never left the planet, but she did escape her confines. So at that point, they were kind of concerned, like, where in the world could she possibly be? And then she comes crashing down on them, right? Like, immediately attacks Scott Free. Now, in that moment, Superman grabs a syringe and stabs it into Barda, and then it's just a ticking clock, right? Like, at that point, it's literally just the clock's ticking down, right? Seconds and seconds and seconds. Like, how long is this going to take? And Barda just keeps on going on the offense, right? Keeps on attacking and attacking. And Superman's like, okay, the cure doesn't work, right? Like, I've got to kill her. And Scott's like, no, don't hurt her. And then she snaps out of it, right? So the cure works. The day is saved, everybody. The day is saved, right? Everything's copacetic. Big Barda has been saved. Switch over to John Constantine, right? Sitting in this room that only he can access in the Tower of Fate, constantly being attacked by the Cloak of Ragman, right? Because it's trying to take the soul of John Constantine. And then here comes Zatanna, and she is pissed, right? Because she's just kind of like, what are you doing, right? Like, why do you have a room here that nobody can find? Why do you have the wizard staff, right? The wizard Shazam. Why do you have a staff and the Spear of Destiny and Madame Xanadu's crystal ball? Why do you have all this, right? You came back from this mission with Jason Todd. Jason Todd died, right? Is this what he died for? So you to grab some just stupid relics? Because from the perception of Zatanna, Constantine went through this whole mission just for the sake of saving these last bits of magic, maybe not really have anything to do with them, but just kind of collecting them, you know, for his own personal interest, because that's really something that John Constantine would do. Dupe people into going on a mission that only he really cares about, knowing they would die, but not really caring, right? Not really worrying about it at all. The funny thing about this is that with this door being blown open and no one really being able to access it except for Constantine and apparently Zatanna, because nobody was really supposed to know it was there, she left the door blown open, right? When that happens, Constantine's like, okay, you have no idea what you've invited here. Anybody can find this place. Enter the Phantom Stranger, right? Phantom Stranger just comes walking in. To give the Marvel fans perspective, imagine the Watcher just shows up. That's when you know things are gonna pop off. And the Phantom Stranger's like, you stole Madame Xanadu's crystal ball. The path you're on, you cannot continue on this. And the response of Constantine is, but if I go off this path, the entire Earth is going to die, right? I've seen the future. I know what will happen. The entire Earth is going to collapse. We're all going to be destroyed, and there'll be nothing that we can do about it. And it's one of these things where he's kind of being chastised by Phantom Stranger, right? He asks Zatanna, like, has he told you what he's done? And she's like, no. And he's like, well, I mean, he took Ragman's cloak, he stabbed Ramakrishna with the Spear of Destiny in order to get the crystal ball, and then he imprisoned Boston Brand in the cloak of Ragman. Zatanna's pissed. She's like, are you serious, man? Like, these are allies, right? These are friends, people that we fought along with for years and years and years, and you're gonna turn on them like that? Like, why would you do that? Now, if anything, all this shows is how dark things are, right? How desperate things are, that this has to happen. Now, from there, you have Constantine, who literally starts laying into the Phantom Stranger, right? Like, after what you did to get yourself doomed for all eternity, right? Because we can kind of go with the origin. The Phantom Stranger is basically Judas, and he's the one that betrayed Jesus. He's like, you're in turn gonna chastise me about the decisions I've made? Phantom Stranger gets pissed, right? Sends him flying into a wall, and then Constantine brandishes the Spear of Destiny, which can kill the Phantom Stranger, and it's like, go on, dude. If you want to play this game, we can play this game. I promise you will die. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, Etrigan pops up, right? And Etrigan's like, gone now, O Etrigan, and rise again the form of man, right? Changes back into Jason Blood and says, Constantine, we're screwed. And he's like, why? And he's like, because Trigon's coming. Like, he's gonna be here in moments, right? In moments, he's gonna burst through the earth, and all hell's gonna break loose, right? Hell is gonna be coming with him. You know, and he's like, and there's more on top of that. And he's like, of course, because Trigon invading the earth is not enough. What more could possibly be going on? And he basically tells them what's going on with the Amazos spreading across the world. Things are getting getting dire for the superheroes very, 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 very fast, right? Because on one side, they have all the villains who've banded together and launched this army of Amazos to spread across the world and kill all the various people that they now have a cure for. On the other side, they've got Trigon who's showing up here. Now, let's be honest with ourselves. The biggest threat out of all these things that we're facing right now is obviously Trigon, right? Trigon's like the biggest threat they have to deal with right now. But it's one of these things where it's like, which one do they choose? If they choose Trigon, then the Amazos are just going to tear everything up, so there's not really going to be anybody left to save. But if they ignore Trigon and they focus on the Amazos, there's not going to be anything left to save, right? So like the Earth, all of them will all basically just be cleansed and destroyed, and that'll be it. Because remember, Trigon's here because he's angry over the fact that these individuals who are infected with the anti-life virus, that they're not really living, but they're not really dead. And they technically should be dead. And because of the fact that they're not, Trigon feels robbed of their souls, right? He feels robbed of the fact that he's not able to take those individuals and bring them to his realm, right? So he's basically just showing up to kill them all, to take their souls, right? Because they are in effect mostly dead, right? Just not officially dead. And so from there, they're like, okay, like the heroes kind of band together and say, okay, so like the only real option that we have here is to effectively synthesize a cure and then spread that cure around the world to stop Trigon, right? Because the Amazos are governed by programming. And if the Amazos are governed by programming, their program says they have to kill those who are infected with the anti-life virus. But if there is nobody infected with the anti-life virus, there'd be nothing for them to destroy. They would just stop what they were doing and just kind of free float, right? They would just stay there. Either that or go back to their home base and just say like all the unlife have been destroyed, basically, because there is no unlife anymore. So they killed the ones that were there before all of them were cured. The only way to really do this, the only way to really pull this off is through a combination of the Flash and Cyborg. And really the Flash more than anything else, where he basically rolls through and reads all these different books on how to produce or how to duplicate viruses or cures. Using that combined with the plasma cells from Cyborg's blood, the Flash's abilities, he was able to basically create 3 billion copies of the serum in moments, right? Probably, an hour or two. But like around that time, within those moments, like Trigon busts out in Paris, right? Like immediately explodes in Paris. All these unlife come flooding towards him. And in 15 minutes, everybody in Paris is dead, right? The entirety of Paris is completely and totally destroyed. Now, I know for somebody like Trigon, this doesn't really seem like a huge grandiose thing, but this is kind of the nature of DC Comics. You don't really see things like Marvel, right? If this was a Marvel story, it would be like, Trigon emerged, and then within 2 seconds, everybody in Paris was dead. Like that's not really realistic, at least as realistic as you can get when it comes to comics, right? I mean, we're talking about a demon emerging from hell, pissed off because people infected with a digital virus aren't really dead, right? So how realistic could we possibly be here? But in comparison between Marvel and DC plays a more quote unquote realistic tone with their comics than Marvel does, right? That's why things are a lot more toned down and not necessarily as flight of fancy as Marvel gets. And so because of that, Trigon, just kind of makes his way out of Paris. Now, with that being the case, Constantine goes and gets Dr. Fate and says, okay, I need you to see what's in this room. When Dr. Fate goes into the room that Constantine always kept hidden, he's met by Etrigan and the Phantom Stranger and John Constantine putting on the cloak of Ragman. And that's when Dr. Fate's like, okay, wow, okay, this is bad. Like things are really bad. If you've got Etrigan here, you've got the Phantom Stranger, who's basically this omnipotent, omniscient guy who basically swears to never interfere. Like things must be exceedingly bad here. And that's when Constantine's like, yeah, they are. I'm gonna need your amulet and I'm gonna need your helm. And Dr. Fate's like, that's not gonna happen, man. I'm not gonna give you that. In that moment, Phantom Stranger stabs Dr. Fate, right? Just like plunges the spear of destiny right through him. And when it's just kind of like, why did you do this? He's like, because Constantine showed me the future and you would stop him from doing what needs to be done, right? So we gotta take you out. But the helm of Nabu, which Dr. Fate wears, cannot be just taken, right? It has to be relinquished freely. He has to basically give it to somebody. And so Constantine's like, yeah, I'm well aware of that. So he grabs the spear of the Wizard Shazam, puts his hand to Dr. Fate's head, and then shouts Shazam. And all the power of Dr. Fate transfers to John Constantine, which he in turn takes the helm, takes the amulet, and says, time to go. Right now, enter Zatanna, right? She comes back in like, okay, what's going, like you just took the power of Dr. Fate. Like what in the world is going on here? And Constantine's like, I'm gonna go save the day. Now, the reality here of what Tom Taylor tells us is it doesn't look like Constantine's gonna survive, right? It doesn't look like he's gonna live through this. Zatanna isn't told this. She's like, are you gonna be able to come back from this? He's like, of course, it's me. Why wouldn't I be able to come back from that, right? But he doesn't actually say, yes, I'll come back. He just says, yeah, it's me, right? And so because of that, where he doesn't really give her a definitive answer, it seems to be because she would try to stop him. The question to ask here, if he's armed with a spear that can kill a god, if he's armed with the magical power of Dr. Fate, which is comparable, if not more powerful than the power of Doctor Strange, if he's got the cloak of Ragman, right, which allows him to use all the abilities of anybody who's been ensnared within the cloak, is all of that going to be enough. Against a force like Trigon, I don't know. But with that being said, guys, we're gonna bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.